Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. We discussed the use of iza and in before sentences which would have fail madhi or even muzare, and see that the kind of changes that took place in the understanding of the statements, the way it altered, as well as in some cases the apparent form of certain nouns, certain verbs, which altered as well. While we were doing all these examples, we were obviously also trying to do what we want to do all along, and the purpose of what we are doing right now is precisely that, to understand the Quranic verses through the application of the principles of grammar that we are learning. So I gave you the example of Surah An-Nasr, which is the 110th Surah of the Quran, wherein it begins with Iza. Likewise, we know that there is another famous Surah, 99, Zilzal, which begins with Iza. Iza Zul Zilatil Ard. Zilzalaha. Iza again has come before Zul Zilat. Pardon me, it's Zul Zilat Til Ard. Now, Zul Zilat is a verb, and if you see, it's a past tense as well as in the passive form. But the fact of the matter is that it's slightly different from the kind of verbs that we know, Zaraba, Qatala, etc. What we have here is, instead of 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 letters. So here is an example of an exception that we have in Arabic, an exceptional category, wherein instead of 3 letters in the original verb, there are 4 letters. This is known as rubai. Instead of thalathi, mujarrad, it's rubai. There are 4 letters. But that is just one of the things that I wanted to point out. There are not many verbs used in the Quran which are rubai. Most of them are thalathi. Well, another example is waswasa. Here it is zalzala. Iza zulzilatil ard. Now, it was actually zulzilat. This is feminine, like you would say qatalat, qutilat, zalzalat, zulzilat. But because it was to be read along with al-ard, therefore there was a kasra zair that was given to zulzilat. Iza zulzilatil ard. When this earth is going to be shaken. Zilzalaha. Now, zilzal is the masdar of zalzala or zulzilat, and it has come here because it was needed to express the meanings of maf'ul mutlaq, to show that the shaking of this planet is going to take place in a manner which is going to be very severe. It's going to be severely shaken, and for that purpose zilzal has been used, and this ha is referring back to al-ard. It's a pronoun for al-ard. So that's another way maf'ul mutlaq is sometimes expressed. Instead of saying iza zulzilatil ardu zilzalan, it says iza zulzilatil ardu zilzalaha wa akhrajatil ardu athqalaha. وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها. And akhraja, he brought out. Wa akhrajatil ard, this earth is going to bring out. Now, how has it gotten converted from past to mudare, future? Because of iza. When iza comes at the beginning of a sentence, even if the verbs are past, they get converted into present and future. So, iza zulzilatil ardu zilzalaha, when earth is going to be shaken severely, wa akhrajatil ardu, and the earth is going to bring out what? Athqalaha, its weight, load, the burden that it was carrying. وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا, وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ, and man would say, I hope you're now noticing that al-ard is rafa because it is the file of this verb. What is going to bring out? Al-ard. And what exactly is going to bring out is athqal. So athqal is maf'ul because it is nasab because it is maf'ul bihi. وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ, and man will say, and man of course is the file of qala, therefore it is rafa. What will he say? Malaha. What has happened to it? What's gone wrong with it? Malaha. Now, that's the shart. فَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. It continues. Now, here is another aspect of the manner these expressions are used in the Quran. What exactly is the jawab-e-shart of iza? There are some people who might say some other things, but there is this probably more popular understanding that the Quran omits to mention the jawab-e-shart. That is, it is left to the imagination of the reader to create the jawab himself. That is, how huge a calamity it's going to be, how scary the situation is going to be, how grim are going to be the prospects. You can imagine yourself. So sometimes, well, on many occasions, I would say in the Quran, you would find that there are expressions wherein there is a shart condition mentioned at the beginning of a sentence, but its second part is omitted so as to create an understanding which perhaps is even more deep, pronounced, effective than if it was expressed. And this is through omitting the second part and inviting the reader to fill in the gaps, to, in other words, come up with his own understanding through imagination. Let's move on. After the use of iza, there is now another similar example of a word which causes the sentences to be divided into two parts and also has an impact on the tenses of verbs. This particular word is law. Law is again a shart like iza and in. It means if. Law yu'akhizuhum bima kasabu. The Quran says, law yu'akhizuhum. Yu'akhizu is obviously a muzare. Yu'akhizu, he holds accountable. Law yu'akhiz, Now what law does is that when it comes before fail mudare, it changes, alters mudare and converts it into mazi. Completely the opposite of what in and iza did. In and iza, when they appear before a sentence with past tense verb, the past tense verb gets converted into mudare, present or future. But in the case of law, it sometimes so happens that when law comes, it changes fail mudare into mazi, like it has happened here. So that's how it happens. That's what the rule is. That yuakhizuhum means he is going to hold them accountable. Law yuakhizukum, if he was to hold them accountable, if he was to cause them to be made accountable for what they did. Bima kasabu, accountable for what they did. The next part is la'ajjala lahumul azab. He would most certainly would have hastened for them the punishment. That is, had God followed the policy, a policy of holding people accountable immediately for the wrongs that they do, he would have caused them to be punished immediately. He would have hastened. La'ajjala. This is the jawab shart. It's the first part is shart with law, causing fail muzari to be converted into fail mazi past. Law yuakhizukum, had he held them accountable, bima, for, kasabu, what they earned, la'ajjala. Now this is the jawab. This is the response. La'ajjala, he most certainly would have hastened, quickened, lahum, for them, al-azab, the punishment. So here is an example, another example of a word which causes changes in sentence and divides the sentence into two parts, and you will find law used quite often. Again, like in the case of in that we discussed earlier, in the case of law too, it's not that it just comes before fail muzare. It quite often comes, perhaps more often comes before fail mazi, and again divides the sentence that it precedes into two parts. A very famous example of this is this particular verse that we did is from Surah Al-Kahf, verse 58. But now we have another example of law being used before mazi fail, and it says law anzalna, had we revealed. Anzalna is past tense, and it says law anzalna, had we revealed hazal Quran, this Quran. And the Quran obviously is in nasab because it's maf'ul bihi. Ala jabalin, had we revealed it upon a mountain. That is why, well, because of ala, the preposition, harf jar actually, it's now in the form of jar, that is jabal. Laraitahu, you would have found it. You would have found it. Now remember, law started with shart, and jawab shart began with la. Likewise over here. Had we revealed this Quran upon a mountain, Jawab Shart. You would have certainly found it. La ra'aita. It is actually ra'aita. You saw. La ra'aita, you would have certainly seen who? It. That is the mountain. Khashi'am mutasaddian. Khashi'an. Dropping, inclining. Mutasaddian. Breaking. This exploding. Khashi'an mutasaddian min khashiyatillah. Came because of fear of Allah. That's the kind of impact that the Quran has, ought to have, on all those creatures that are sensitive, that are responsive. Khashiyan and mutasaddian are both in nasab because of halat. You would have found it, that is, you would have seen the mountain inclining, breaking, exploding because of God's fear. So here again, you have law starting a sentence and breaking it to two parts, dividing it into two parts, shart and jawab shart. Now, let's move on. There is another similar word which appears quite often in the Quran and does things which we ought to know in order for us to be able to understand the Quranic text. The word is, it's an. If I was to mention one English equivalent of an, it's that. But what exactly is its role? Let's see. In Surah Al-Baqarah, where fasting and its different aspects applicable on us are talked about, the Quran says, وَأَن تَصُومُوا, and that you fast, خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, is better for you. That is, an has caused tasumuna to drop its noon. Wan tasumu, and that you fast, khairul lakum, is better for you. So that is what it does. The meaning is, generally speaking, that, but when it comes, it would remove the noon of fail mudari if it has a noon, and if it doesn't have a noon, then we shall see hopefully that it gives a nasab towards the end of mudari instead of the normal zamma or rafa. So the other example is, which is going to be for a singular verb for the singular. The Quran says, here it's Surah Al-Baqarah verse 184. Surah Al-Baqarah says, Inna Allaha, indeed Allah, la yastahi, is not shy, an yadriba, that he should describe, mathalan, the example, ma ba'udatan, of a mosquito. and so on. This is towards the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 26. Now here what has happened is that this an has come. Indeed, God is not shy in that he should describe an, that he should describe yadriba. So yadribu fi'l mudari converts its pesh, its dhamma to fatha, zabr, and that is what it does. So an is also a word that you should watch out. But you should also watch out for something in case of an, which I guess is more frequent, which is that an is doing its job, but is not apparent, is not visible. And this is what happens in the Quran quite often. For example, in Surah Ibrahim, verse 31, the Almighty is saying, Qul, say, li'ibadiya allazina amanu, say to my servants, allazina, those, amanu, who believed, those who have believed. What should you say to them? Yuqimus salat. Yuqimus salat. That they should say their prayers regularly. Qul, say, li'ibadi, to my servants, allazina, those who amanu, believed, yuqimus salat. Now, the idea is, the point is that we know in fi'l mudari it should be yuqimuna. When you're talking about plural, even if it's third person, it's yansuruna, yaqtuluna, yadribuna, yuqimuna. But it doesn't say yuqimun. It has its noon removed. Why? Because there is an un implied over here. An yuqimus salat. That they should say their prayers, they should establish prayers. So sometimes, or as I said earlier, on many occasions, you would find that the effect of an is there on a verb, on fi'l mudari, but you don't find unexpressed visibly. It's not there to be seen. So that's something that needs to be understood. And when we practice in the Quran, what we find is that this is what appears quite often. Just one small example of another similar case, and hopefully we'll be done with this discussion. And that example is the example of a similar word, which is li, lam, one single letter. In Surah Nahl, the Almighty is mentioning in verse 25, liyahmilu awzarahum, liyahmilu awzarahum. Li means so that. The end result of it is that, liyahmilu. And it comes quite often in the Quran. Li obviously is a harf-e-jar as well, but here it comes before a verb, and what it is doing is yahmilu, which should have been yahmiluna, becomes yahmilu. Liyahmilu, so that they should bear awzarahum, their weights, their burdens. That is another category. And obviously, you practice more of it and you find more of it in the Quran, and you would know why li is doing to verbs like others are doing. May the Almighty enable us to understand the Quran, and may He help us to be inclined to read it more and more, to understand it properly. and to be able to follow it as best as we can.